According to Australian Department of Home Affairs, 75% of the visa applications of Indian students are being processed within 22 days. What does that talk about Australian visas? It's comparatively very easy as opposed to Canada, where there are just 21 diplomats right now in India who are processing the visa. So it might just take 2 or 3 months to get the visa. With Germany, you have the entire APS process. It takes more than 3-4 months to do that. But with Australia, the visa process is fairly simple. So if you have had a rejected visa, I might just recommend you to apply to Australia. If you're fearful that you'll get a visa rejection, Australia might be a good place for you. And if you're fearful that there is recession and the economies of UK and Canada are not good, Australia definitely is still a good bet. Having said that, Australia has its own cons. So in this video, let's compare Australia with other countries and finally give it a verdict whether you should go to study abroad in Australia or not. Without further ado, let's directly jump into it. Let's first of all talk about the cost of education, which is sort of a major con for Australia. Please understand this topic very carefully. If you go for a PG diploma in Canada, which is the easiest way to go to Canada, it is a cheap option. You can go very easy, but it does not have a lot of job opportunities. At the same time, if you go to UK, you can go to a lower end university in UK, spend only 12 to 13 lakh or 15 lakh rupees and go for a lower end university in UK. That also will not lead you to good job opportunities. So if you have to compare Apple, then compare it with Apple. When you're comparing an Australian degree which will get you a job, compare it with a UK degree or a Canadian degree that will get you a job. A Canadian degree that will get you a job is a master's degree. A master's degree in Canada will cost you around 40 lakh rupees. So the point is, if you're comparing like for like, apple for apple, a degree which will get you a job with a degree that will get you a job, then Australia, UK and Canada probably are at the same place. If I'm comparing Imperial costs 30 lakh rupees. If I take Monash would cost me 40 lakh rupees. And if I take Rotman would cost me 60 lakh rupees. But if I take like a UBC or somewhere, it will cost me somewhere around 35 lakh rupees. So ideally, the best universities are in the same range. But in the cheap universities, where you just go for visa, that probably you will find easily in Canada and UK, not in Australia. In Australia, the cheapest that you can do is somewhere around 15 to 20 lakh rupees, but that's the cheapest that you can do. So if I have to give it points, I am forced to give this point to UK and Canada just because they have the option of very cheap degrees. But ideally, know this for a fact that UK, Australia and Canada, all these places, the degrees that are worth going for, the degrees where you'll find jobs, would ideally cost you the same. Second point being quality education. Australia has G8, UK has Russell Group, and Canada has its best 5 universities. So all these universities are good. Until you're going to these universities, I don't think you should be worried. You'll be fine. Third point is that of settlement prospects and permanent residencyship. Now, let's first of all understand UK. UK ideally is a very small country. It is already influxed with a lot of Indians, and current political scenario in UK is suggesting that it will get tighter, harder and harder for international students to find jobs there and eventual settlement prospects there. Otherwise, you ideally get an indefinite leave to return in UK just in 5 years. But in the current scenario, it is very likely that they will increase this 5 year and it would probably become a bit more harder to get ILR or a permanent residencyship in UK. Now, considering Canada, fairly easy to get a PR. It will continue to stay same. It wouldn't ideally become difficult. Probably one thing or the other would get difficult, but then if you're moving to some other place, let's suppose you're moving to New Brunswick or you're moving to Saskatchewan, any of these places you're moving to, you will eventually get a PR. Now, talking about Australia, one very important point that comes to Australia is, will I get a PR in Australia? Understand this point. Australia has 3 major cities. It has Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane. If you're going to these 3 cities, you getting a PR, that question becomes iffy. Iffy in the sense, you get a 3 to 4 year post-study work visa. If you work that time, if you have the luck, if you qualify, you might get a PR. But if let's suppose you decide to move slightly smaller city, that can be Adelaide, that can be Perth, that can be Canberra, the capital. It's a slightly smaller city, just that there are not a lot of people. It's not like a huge community is living there. In that case, you will definitely get a PR. And if you plan to move to a regional area, you plan to go to Gold Coast or any other place, which is again not bad, but the PR chances just go drastically higher. So it depends a lot on where you're going in Australia, because they're specifically looking at the places you're coming to. But talking specifically in terms of PR, it is very much likely that you'll get a PR in Canada as well as Australia. Probably not in UK. Next point is talking about health insurance. With UK, you have a health insurance cost of somewhere around £450 that you have to pay for every year. So if you're going for a 2-year education, that's around 900, which would be somewhere around 1 lakh rupees. 1 lakh rupees extra that you're paying for health insurance. Next, talking about Canada, your health, all the costs are covered by the government. So that's a good thing. But then their healthcare system is right now going through a catastrophe. Like, I mean, they have shortage of proper doctors right now in the economy, and it takes 6 to 7 weeks just to get appointment of a doctor. Even in emergency, students are taking 6 to 8 hours just in emergency. So the healthcare system is really messed up in Canada, but it is free. Although there are some international students who end up taking health insurance, private health insurance. Let's not talk about that. Let's just let go of that. Then you have the overseas student health cover. That happens in Australia, where you have to spend somewhere around $500 to $600 AUD, depending on the provider that you end up choosing. Even though it's an expense, it is a necessary expense that you have to take up in case you're planning to study in Australia. Next point is that of minimum wage. Australian minimum wage right now is $23.23, which loosely converts to around 1,232 Indian rupees. With regards to UK, the minimum wage is £10.42, which is 1,060 Indian rupees. But with regards to Canada, it depends a lot on which city you're moving to. Every city has its own table. This is the current minimum wage table of Canada. But taking an example of Ontario, where majority of the students go to, Ontario, Toronto, Mississauga, all these places, the minimum wage is $16.55, which is loosely around 1,000 Indian rupees. So it is a clear understanding that Australia has the highest minimum wage. In terms of salaries, Australia is really good. But you also need to understand that Australia is also amongst the most expensive countries that you can go to. Melbourne and Sydney consistently rank amongst the most expensive cities to live in. This is a point definitely people will say in the comment section, but I would also like to reiterate, are London rents higher or are Melbourne rents higher? The answer is London. Or at the same time, I would want to ask you, if you're comparing downtown Toronto rent as opposed to downtown Melbourne rent, these are actually not that different. So the point is, rents right now have bubbled up in every economy. Australia is going through a housing crisis. Canada is going through extreme housing crisis right now. Justin Trudeau is just being heckled just because people are not being able to afford homes in Canada. So if the point is Australia being expensive, yes, Australia is expensive, but at the same time, it has high salaries. So this point, I would definitely give Australia. Next point is that of cultural integration. Now, when you think of Canada, you think that, okay, I'll not miss India. With UK also, you think you'll not miss India. But did you know with Australia also 32% of the people have come from different countries. In Australia also, if you plan to go to Melbourne or Sydney, you will be fine. In Australia also, you'll be completely fine. For breakfast also, you can get Indian food, lunch Indian food. So it's not like you'll miss Indian food. You're not going that far. Next differentiating point is that of time difference. With Canada, you'll have a time difference of 11 to 14, 15 hours. So it becomes very difficult for you to communicate back with your family. With UK, it is slightly better with 5.5 hour difference. And with Australia, it is again 4 to 5.5 hours, 6 hour difference. But ideally, it is very much possible for you to communicate with your family if you're in UK or Australia as opposed to Canada. Next point is that of weather condition. Always, whenever I talk about weather condition, I give this point to Australia. There is no comparison of Australian weather, and when I say Australian weather, I mean Melbourne and Sydney. This weather as opposed to any other place in UK or in Canada, unless you're going to Vancouver. If you're going to Vancouver, then I might just give some points to Vancouver. Other than that, Australian weather is way better. You don't want to live in Canadian winters. It's terrible. I've experienced that. It's terrible. Next point is that of current job market. Australia right now has a very good job market as opposed to UK and Canada, which right now are going through a sluggish period. So if you're planning to study abroad right now, Australia would ideally be the best bet for you. And if you're planning to study abroad and want help with it, you can go to the description, fill the form. My team will get in touch with you and help you with admissions in the top 8 Australian universities. We ideally focus on top 8 universities. We do admissions for smaller universities also. Now, if you're thinking that you want to go to study in Australia, watch this video. Cons of studying in Australia. I not only talk about the pros, I also talk about cons. There is a list. This video.